Welcome to the prolific. Oh, wow, I did like a whole welcome. That was a little too intense. Or it's not. No, it's not intense enough because this podcast is sweet. Welcome to the prolific super producer podcast. A couple of guys here making music from our bedrooms who have done the thing. We are out here trying to help other people who want to do the thing too. If you have songs, if you've got music in you and you're just doing it by yourself right now, there is absolutely all kinds of outlets, all kind of possibilities and opportunities for you to get your music out there and to go after any kind of goal, whether it's a personal goal of just getting a song done or a professional goal of you want to do this thing for real, you want to make a career out of it. Either way, we hope to show up powerfully for you every single week, giving you tips and advice just from our own past experiences of trying to navigate this. And part of navigating all this stuff is you're going to have to deal with support. You're going to have to deal with family. You're going to have to deal with friends. You're going to have to deal with the people that believe in you, and you're going to have to deal with the people that don't believe in you, and that sometimes hurt you and come down on you pretty hard for doing this whole music thing. Oh, still doing this whole music thing? Yeah, if any of that resonates with you, this is an episode for you. This is something that I wish I had a big brother sit me down and talk to me about to help me go forward with my music, because while we probably won't be getting into super tactical nitty-gritty stuff when it comes to production and vocal performance and blah, 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 songwriting and lyricism, this is just as an impactful episode because we're going to be talking about you. We're going to be talking about who you are as a human and the respect that you deserve as a human and the ways that you can feel supported even if you don't feel like you have support right now. That's what we hope to get into today to help you. So before we dive in to all this awesome topic that we've got for you, I would just love to give you a quick gift if you're still in you're in the throes of this, right? Whether you've got support, whether or not, you're just trying to make songs, and maybe making songs doesn't come too easy to you right now, or you're looking for a new way to create because your workflow feels a little stale. I put together a guide. It's called Finish Songs in 5 Steps, and it's just 5 steps. It's like a 10-page PDF. You could just check it out, and it's just going to walk you through how to start from scratch and how to go from scratch and reach all the way to the finish line after writing a song with, lyrics, yes, melody, yes, some production, some brief mixing and mastering in there, and you could have a song in 5 steps. You could absolutely do this on rinse and repeat. So if that sounds like something you'd like to get your hands on, it's free. You might as well. Just go to finishsongsguide.com, and you can check that out, download it, and start using it. But today, all right, Tyson, we ready for this? Ready to dive into this topic?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be. We scheduled it, so.
Oh, it's true. We're live right now. Oops.
Thing I want to mention before we dive into this episode, because this will be probably a little heavier than most of our other episodes, right? We're not talking about music production necessarily, but before you jump just to the next episode and just skip this entirely, this skill of dealing with people is critical to your success. It is more important than being able to write good songs. It is more important than being able to make them sound good. It is more important than being able to know how to outsource to other professionals. It is more important than anything else that you will ever learn about music is how to deal with people. And also specifically with this topic in particular, it's kind of like a meta skill of you can't really learn that much until you learn how to read. So it's kind of one of those skills, right? So once we learn how to deal with people, then we can get way further in whatever our other goals are. And being able to not only deal with the people themselves, but also deal with ourselves with those external forces acting on us, whether they're positive or negative, or however you want to perceive those forces, that is going to impact the way that you react in your own life. Before you skip this one, I would really encourage you to listen all the way through, because I believe that this is the most powerful episode that we may ever create on this podcast. Yeah. So don't skip, and I really hope that we can do this topic justice for you so that you can really learn this meta skill of dealing with people and how to react to other people's feedback for yourself.
And dare I say too, right? Of all the things that kill music careers, isn't it probably this? Isn't it probably someone said something to you and it was someone who was really close? It was someone who you would have never expected reacting the way they did or something, or whatever, or a teacher at a school, or it's people. People kill music careers. You know what I mean? People have the ability to. It's not so much about the technical, I couldn't figure out how to record. No one's saying that when they didn't do their music career, right? I'm sure you nerded out and you got the microphone, you bought the interface, you figured out the best DAW, you started to create, and then you start sharing what you're creating something happens. I think that's the poison that we're going to try to talk through today. And we kind of view it as a few levels that we're going to break down, right? We've got people who just don't support you, who you get utter lack of support, how to navigate that. Then you've got people who give you surface level support, right? And then how do we, interact with those people? And then you've got people who give you deep support, that deep well of, comfort and, encouragement. And how do we utilize those relationships as well? So there's a couple levels we want to walk through. And I think the best place to start, Tyson, do you have a story? Let's just start with people who I'm sure maybe there's a few, right? Maybe there's a few. I know I certainly have a few, but just what's a story where you have had lack of support in this whole music thing with someone?
Story time. This gets deep real fast. So
oh boy.
When I was in high school, I was in a band, right? We were killing it, in our hometown of 2,500 people. So
let's go.
We were the best band in town by far because we were the only band that stayed together for more than 6 months. So by default, we were the best and most successful. All jokes aside, we had worked really hard to, write an album, and we had finally come up with final recording for our album. So we had printed some CDs, we made some shirts, and we wanted to have an album release show. So we actually booked a venue in town, and we said okay, this is the date we're gonna have a show here. We were trying to save up enough money for a PA system to be able to practice with and play live shows and all that stuff. Just own some of the gear that we would need to pull some of the other things that we wanted to off, right? Move ourselves closer to our dream of being able to be touring musicians, being a touring band, right? That was the ultimate goal. So we made this show, and obviously still being in high school, we actually somehow convinced the principal that to announce our concert on the morning announcements. I don't know how we pulled that off, but he allowed us to announce it to the entire high school, hey, we're having a show tonight. You better show up, or it went over really well. We had a packed, sold-out show in our little tiny town of Bonners Ferry, Idaho.
I love this,
awesome. Man. And so we pack that this little tiny theater out, and we sell out of merch in the first 10 minutes. Before we've even started playing the show, we've sold out all of our merch. It was awesome. And we sell every single piece of stuff that we had to sell. We sold all of our CDs that we had printed. We had sold all of our shirts that we had printed. Everybody was super excited. It was awesome.
Wow.
So we go up there and we play our set, go back off stage. It was really awkward because they the
an encore?
An encore, right?
Yeah.
So they called for an encore, and we're we played all of our songs. We don't have any other songs to play. so we went back up there, and we played another song that we had already played earlier. So
I love it.
It was a little awkward. It was just one of those moments though, in my life, at that moment, I'm this is attainable. This is the dream. We have made it, right?
Yeah.
Even though we only paid for half of our PA system, it was still incredible.
Yeah.
And after that show, though, we're, kind of all milling around, shaking hands and thanking everybody for coming out. And we're just about ready to start packing up and leaving. And my dad walks up to me, and he's oh, hey, good job, nice show. And I was oh, thanks. And then he told something, though, that just rocked me. He said, I hope you never expect to do this for a living. And
wow,
I can still feel that moment that he said that. And it was almost offhand, but you could tell he obviously truly believes what he was saying. And that impacted me for years after that point of okay, I love music, but I'm never going to be able to do this really. Processing through that, though, I have no hard feelings against my dad. I don't even blame him for saying that to me, because the reason why, as putting ourselves in our parents' shoes, their goal is to keep us safe, and they don't want to see us fail. And music is seen as risky. My dad doesn't know anything about music. He's never musical. He never listens to music in the car. He doesn't understand it. Yeah. And not to say that he was just completely, clueless, but he was trying to keep me safe. He wanted me to go on a path that was safer. Our parents' goal is to keep us safe, not for us to be happy. Ultimately, if it comes of a choice between happiness and safety, they are going to choose safety every single time.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to process like that emotional like turmoil is like I understand like where he was coming from, and his intentions were good. And one thing that I would want to add in here is that we judge ourselves by our intentions, and we judge others by their actions. So put yourself in their shoes, really try to empathize, or if you can't empathize, sympathize with them of why they said those things, because they probably were intending good, but their actions spoke something else into us. And from our intentions, right, our perspective, that was wrong or that was really harmful. And so the last thing I want to do like with these stories is to come out and say like they shouldn't have said that. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter, because they intended well. They were trying to help us in those moments. And so I'm sure that you listening probably have a story similar to this, or if you don't already, you will have a story like this. And I would really strongly recommend like take it with a grain of salt, because they are probably intending well, and don't burn bridges because of these comments that you make. Don't just, flip out by like, oh yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. And like, I'm just going to grind until I make it. Right. Like, you can let it light a fire in you to, be even more excited about pursuing music, but also recognize like that person is trying to protect you. So anything else to add there, Nathan? Or I think you have a story too.
Yeah, I can share a quick one too, but I think the takeaway right off the bat, people lack of support is, Tyson said it, if you can take a second and detach yourself from the situation that just happened, the comment that was just made, the look you just got, like whatever, you can try to not make it about you, but make it about the other person for a second and think about where they're coming from. What context does this person have? Because if it's someone like, like Tyson was saying, like, hey, someone like his father knows about music, but doesn't understand the music business, or doesn't understand this, the intricacies of all this stuff of the world that you're in. It almost feels like it's super simple. Oh, you just don't quite understand this thing. That's cool. It makes total sense why you would think that, but here's why it's different. And so this is where it gets tough, because it's like emotion meets logic, right? Like if someone like your father's telling you that, I mean, because you can't just be that logical in the moment, because there's all these other ties you have to that person relationally. So I think it's like, okay, it's cool if it stings, but like I just love, this is what I admire about that story so much, Tyson, is you were able to kind of, maybe it didn't happen overnight, but you were able to get to the point where I was like, okay, my dad is not being malicious. He's not trying to be mean. Like this isn't coming out of some jealous place of his heart, and it's like he's not the villain. You know what I mean? He's just like he just loves you, and that's the way that he knows how to love you, is to express that by he just wants to protect you, and with something that he doesn't know, something something so elusive like music that parents don't often understand unless they've been in it. Yeah, it's kind of like I want to protect you from that, because here I think part of the stigma is to make it in music, you have to be Beyonce or nothing. You know what I mean? It's like you have to be Aerosmith or nothing. Like these massive brand names that everybody knows, even if they're not that big a fan of, they know the name. A lot of people who aren't in the music business and in the music world don't understand that there's like, okay, yeah, there's making $0 a month from this music thing, and there's making like millions of dollars a month from this music thing. But like, what about all those steps in between? Like there's a category for like a side hustle that's like 10 grand a year. And then like people who are writing full time, and it's like 40 grand a year. And it's like, it's possible, but just a lot of people don't know that. It's the awareness, so you kind of have to step outside of the situation for a second with people who are just straight up not giving you support, and maybe take a second and see where they're coming from. I almost think it's harder to do that with someone like family than it is just a bystander on the street, or just a comment that you get on social media or something. It's like, at least for me, it feels like that. Like it can still sting, but there's this great quote by John Acuff. He wrote a book called Start, and it's just phenomenal. And he equates, this is how he talks about hate comments and like people not supporting you and just being mean and about your craft and stuff, is he's like, getting a hate comment is literally the equivalent of some random person driving past your house, stopping for a second and just yelling, "I hate your lawn. You must suck as a human," and then just keeps driving. Like if you know what I mean? Like if that actually happened, we'd be like, we wouldn't care. It'd be like, dude, I don't even know who you were. You don't even know me. You're just making a judgment about me based off how my lawn looks. Like I was about to mow it in a few hours, like whatever. It's like people have no context. Those people are just spitting poison from whatever wounds. I feel like it's almost easier to brush that off because it's like, it's almost like I just feel sorry. It's like, oh man, something must be going on, because no normal human being would ever function like that and would ever say stuff like that. So it can be a little trickier, I think, when you're getting lack of support from close people like that. I don't know if would you think the same? Like,
no, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because I have a relationship with my dad, right? Like we were close. Like that.
Yes.
I have much more weight on what those people say. So,
yes.
For example, if some rando in the street stops by me, is like, "Hey, you're ugly," like I don't really care. Like,
right?
Whatever.
It's like, who? What?
Sure. But then if my wife said that, like. Mm-hmm. Okay, now that's a completely different issue because she's so close to me, right? Like I have such a close relationship with my wife. Like her opinion means the world to me. And so if she thinks something about me, like that's going to rock my world, good or bad.
Even if it's a little thing. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if it's a little thing versus some random person, because I don't have a relationship with them. I don't care. I don't care what they think, honestly. I think there's a level though of also recognizing who is, if it's like a post on a Facebook post or something, or a comment on your Instagram post or something, make sure also that you're not giving them more weight than they deserve. If you wouldn't look up to that person in real life, they shouldn't have a weight in your opinion of their comment, right? Because let's just use the music for example, right? If I'm further along in my career than somebody else, and somebody else is like, "Why are you posting content? That's stupid," and they have like 5 monthly listeners on their Spotify, and I have 10,000, like I'm not going to listen to them because I'm further along. Like their expertise in that area doesn't matter because obviously I know more than them because I've been able to execute and build more than they have. Versus if it's somebody who has 1 million monthly listeners and then they're telling me like, "Oh, don't make content, that's stupid," I might actually pay attention to them.
You might listen, yeah, because you will never be criticized by someone doing more than you. You will not be criticized by someone doing more than you. Like if someone, you know what I mean? Like to your point, like people who are out here actually doing this music thing, actually pursuing it, actually get it. They don't have time to go back and look at other people and just like poop on them. You know what I mean? It's like, it's anyone who is worth their salt and is getting after something and is success driven, all that kind of stuff. Probably the people you'd love to hang around, they just don't behave like that because they know it's a waste of time. They don't even think like that. You know what I mean? So I love that you said that. Like if you're just getting comments, it's like, you're not going to get shade from people who are doing more than, like people doing more than you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the reason why most of the time you get hate from people who are, behind you or whatever, they are usually just simply jealous of where you're at. Because ultimately what it reminds them of, especially when you're having some sort of success, people will look at that and they are then reminded that they didn't take the actions to fulfill their own dreams. And so it has zero of anything to do with you. It has 100% to do with them and their own life decisions and their own regrets. And they may not be able to articulate that. Most likely they won't be able to because they aren't self-aware enough to know what they're doing. If they were self-aware enough to know what they were doing, they would change their actions to then be more successful in whatever their goals are. And I'm not talking about like monetary success. I'm just talking about like emotional progressiveness success, right? And so
fulfillment.
I think this is a really important conversation. We're kind of going a little bit off of how to deal with especially those who are closer to us with this. But I think this is also an important conversation about having, how to deal with haters, and ultimately, do you give them any credibility or weight? Probably not, because the only people who are hating you are behind you, and they're either jealous of you or they have just lapsed any sort of concept of reality.
So really, lack of support. You've got people who just don't support you. In a way, it can be kind of easy to deal with, but it can get a little trickier when it's coming from someone close to you. My experience with that is, like, really quickly, I just had it was like in the beginning of me starting to do this whole music thing, and I had done it for a little bit now, and was like okay at it, you know? So it was kind of at the point where I was just starting to feel a little confident. Isn't that funny, huh? Like, the same thing with your story, Tyson. It's like once you're getting a little bit of confidence, it's almost like there's a little test with someone to like poke at you a little bit, whether they're trying to be mean or trying not to. You know, it's like, it's kind of funny. So it was right at that kind of point of like, oh, okay, I'm getting my wings a little bit. And I had this like super close person to me. It was like a second mom, like that close. Just kind of say like, hey, what's all this ever going to do for you? You know, it's like the same kind of thing. I still hear that. You know, like I still can feel that feeling like you were saying, Tyson, with your dad. It's like, oh, wow, that kind of sucked to hear. Thank you. You know, and like it takes a little bit, but I think something that's common in both of those stories, and probably for a lot of people, is the ability to climb out of that. Is there's some sort of baseline resilience that even if it hurts, even if it stings, you know there's something special going on here. And the fact is, only you are really going to know and understand what's going on there. I hope and pray that, like, if you don't have people who understand this whole music thing, that you do. And if it's just us right now from afar, keep listening, keep hanging out, leave comments like we've got your back. You know what I mean? But, like, not a lot of people get this whole music thing. So there does need to be, to the old adage that artists need thick skin, there's a little bit of truth to that. And it's not just someone saying that they don't like your music. I mean, it's, to me, that's just, yeah, cool. Like, there's kinds of music I don't like, you know, and then it's no big deal. You know, I think there's something for everybody, but like it can be difficult when you have close people. I think that's where the thick skin kind of needs to come into place a little bit, is it's really more with close relationships and people who don't quite understand this thing, which I think leads us to the next category, right, Tyson? Like, there's lack of support, then there's like surface level support, where it's like you got these people who they don't get it. They don't get it, but they aren't against you. You know what I mean? And maybe they're not even against your music. They just don't understand it. So they love you. They support you. They're all about you as a person. They just don't quite understand the late hours working on this thing, or why you get up early to work on a whatever. They can't get it. And so, like, a goofy example for me was, I was like, okay, there's this trend, there's this thing called underwater basket weaving. It's a real thing. You can look it up. I have no desire to even understand what's going on there. You know what I mean? But just to be real, but like if my sister came to me, or if even a buddy, if Tyson came to me, it was like, dude, you know what I just started doing on my Saturday mornings? I'm like underwater basket weaving. I would be like, dude, I'm so happy for you. You know what I mean? Like, I am happy that you are enjoying this, even though I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. I would never do it, but I'm pumped for Tyson because I care about Tyson. You know, it's like, I feel like that's the next category of people. And I think that's kind of most common. A common place to experience this is probably around the dinner table at holidays. You know, I don't know if, like, Tyson, if you have stories about this, or like you're at Christmas and like Aunt Sally or whoever is like talking to you and like trying to start a conversation about music, and you're like, you just know she doesn't get it, but she loves you, and like you just get the glazed over like, yeah, okay, so how's work? You know that gets you is probably extended family or friends of friends, or it's like this this category of people who are like, you know, you're trying to explain what you're doing. And I think that something that always helped, or that I did not do, I do it now, and this is why we're doing this podcast episode, so y'all can be better than we were, is that you don't have to spill the beans. You don't have to, with this level of people who care about you, who love you, who get you, don't get the music. You just don't have to tell them what you're up to. Like, it took me so long to figure this out. Like, even though they're family, it's like I thought I had this this secret rule that, like, it's family. You need to be honest. You need to tell everything or whatever. And so I'm off explaining, yeah, I'm excited to mix this thing and submit it to Spotify, and it'd be cool if it got on a playlist, because if it got on a playlist, then it could help. You know, and they're just like bug-eyed, you know, and it's like, you just don't even have to. You just don't have to bare your heart to people, or even sit there and try to justify why you're doing this artistry thing, or talk about the next big thing that you have for you just don't have to. You know, if Aunt Sally's like, how's music? Oh, it's going great. I'm really enjoying it. How's things for you? You know, it's like, you don't have to go into it.
Yeah, I guess another tip that I would have to add on to that is, when you're talking to these people, like, accept their support. Like, you know, be grateful that they're not against you, because that actually does count for something. And then also, I've run into this a ton, because not only am I in music, I also am a mastering engineer, which even less people are aware of. And so, like, when people ask me, it's always an awkward question when people ask me. They're like, oh, like, what do you do for a living? And I was like, all right, here we go. Like,
yep.
I'm a mastering engineer. And then they're like, a what engineer? And I'm like, I'm a mastering engineer. It's part of the music production process. Like, I work in music post-production. They're like, what?
Say what?
So then I have to like, try to like make weird analogies of like, oh, like Photoshop, like photographers use Photoshop. Like, it's like, it gets in this whole other like conversation. And then I end up having to explain the whole music production process to people, to explain like my little tiny portion of it at the very end. And it's just like always this like kind of awkward thing that happens, but people get the music management agency a lot more. So I'm just starting to tell them that.
Yeah, there we
I'm
go.
like, I own a music management agency. I manage artists, and that they usually kind of get that a little
End
bit
of
more.
Conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I try to like, basically I try to dumb it down as much as possible so that they get it, but they don't have to ask questions, right? It's like, if you can explain what you do in one sentence, it's like if you are dating somebody and you go over to their house to meet their parents for their first time, and your, potential future father-in-law like leans across the table and he's like, okay, so what do you do? Right?
Yes.
If you can't explain it in one succinct sentence, you don't understand what you do good enough. And that goes into another whole level of like, if you probably don't understand what you do, then you probably need to figure that part out first before you try to go do that thing. But that's a whole nother conversation. But at the end of the day, explain it as simply as possible, but don't give them any more details. If they are interested, they will inquire more.
They will
and then
ask.
at that point, you can open up more if they actually legitimately want to know, to the extent that you're comfortable with. Because again, like, you can always redirect the conversation somewhere else if you really don't want to talk about it. It's totally fine. You don't need to. You don't need to bare your soul to strangers in the grocery store that ask like, "Oh, what do you do?"
No,
Right, so.
you just don't. You have full permission to do that, and it matters. Like, just because you let someone know what you're going to do with your music, that literally has no bearing on if you do it or not. You know what I mean? Like, the only person you need to justify your actions to is yourself. I don't know. Just because you told Aunt Sally or whatever, like, that doesn't mean now that it's going to you know what I mean? It's just like, to me, it's just a waste of energy. It's a waste of mental space. It's like, I don't need to do that. And just like Tyson said, if you've got family or friends that are at this surface level, if they want to go deeper, they will. Like, you'll get a read on it. If they want to go deeper, they will. And if someone's trying to kind of pick at you a little bit, you can shut down the conversation in a kind way. Like, you just don't have to give all the details away. Really, the only person who should know all the details is you, or a significant other, or, the band members in your band. Like, people who are actually, with you and who are actually a part of this thing you're trying to do. The people in this category can kind of be, they really don't have an impact in what you're going to do with your music or not. So I guess, speaking of that, right, if we're going to move on to kind of this next layer deeper, if we're talking about deep support. Okay, so if, like, we've covered lack of support, surface level, what about deep support? People who not only, understand you and are for you as a person, but actually dig the music you're making. They think you're good. They believe in your ability to do this music stuff. They actually, like, understand this vision that you have for your career and support you fully. But maybe we can kind of, like, break this down a little bit too, Tyson. What do you think about people in this category? I mean, it's awesome, I think, to start off with.
No, this is what everybody wants, right? Like,
yes.
You want people who are just die hard, like, I will, give you my life savings to make sure that you're successful. Like, that's what you want from people.
Yeah.
So in this category, right, like, your diehard fans are 100% in this category, right? Like, the people who enjoy your music, get the music. They understand the emotional depth that you are putting into your music. They understand the effort, the struggle that it takes to be successful in music. Those are the people that kind of fit this category. The other category that I would say fits this really well is mentors. So I have an example of an individual who really mentored me early on when I first went to college and was, like, really diving into the music production process and learning how to do all of that stuff. He came alongside me and he just, like, invited me over to his house, and he's just started, like, showing me stuff. Like, we had no, like, a formal arrangement of doing anything. He's like, hey, like, do you want to hang out sometime? Like, yeah, I guess, like, I don't have any friends, so sure, I'll hang out
Let's
with you.
do it, yeah.
And so then I like show up to his house, and then he, you know, like brought me to the back room in his apartment where he had his whole, you know, studio set up. And
Let's
then
go.
I like sat on this like stool, like hunched over his shoulder as he's like working in his DAW, and he like pulled up my session and was like, you know, pointing out like different tracks that I, you know, had done, and like, oh, he's like, oh, you should probably like double this guitar, like, you know, like just track your guitars twice. Like, why would you just like adjust the timing? It's like you create phase issues and things like that. So it's like, you know, all this like advanced like music production stuff that I had, or not even advanced necessarily, but just like all this music production process that like I just had no clue about. But he was, you know, obviously he was a producer himself, and he understood it, and he just like wanted to help me out. And he like, we never talked about like what we were doing necessarily, but he was very intent on like mentoring me, even though I had never asked for it, which honestly is one of the biggest things that you'll find in this category of people, because they will go out of their way to support you in ways that you never asked them to do.
Yes.
That is
huge.
Ultimately like the distinguishment, I feel like, of this category, but also like the people that honestly will mean the success or death of you as in music. Because I've had two people specifically that I know about, that I can think off the top of my head, who fit this category. And the first one is this individual, and then the next one was a mastering engineer. And so that's all, honestly, part of the reason why I went into mastering to begin with, was because of this other mastering engineer who like really wanted to support me. Like, I had called her up, and she's like, oh yeah, like this is cool, and you know, like this is what I did, this is how, you know, you can get started. And I was like, oh, like I could do that, right? So that was another person. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these people who are like deep support people are going to go out of the way to help you, and ultimately will mean the success of your career. And when you find these people, don't take it for granted. Make sure that you maintain these relationships for the long haul, because you're always going to need these people. You're always going to need those people that have, you know, support you deeply, especially when you run into those people or those comments that really just rock you to the core, like the stories that we shared. When you end up with those, like, you need somebody else to be able to balance that out most of the time. Like, most of us are not that resilient, even though we would like to think that we are. We're not, and we're not as tough as we, you know, sometimes our exterior
portray. Yes, 100%. I think that's key, and getting this kind of support from other people who are in this field, or in the field that you want to get into, you know, whether that's a fellow artist because you're trying to be an artist, or in Tyson's case, like a mastering engineer, which is what he ended up doing, you know, like, or production, like getting support from other people in the same craft, I would absolutely classify as a deep level of support. Because even if you got your family, you know, and they love you and they love your music and they're all about it, they always ask you, and they're behind you, they can still not understand all the intricacies of what you're doing. You know what I mean? They can appreciate it, but they just don't understand what the process is, you know, like, but if you're able to link up with somebody who understands, you know, like reverb settings, or can like nerd out about the certain thing that you did with your instruments in this transition, you know, like to get gritty like that, that's a level of support that is like absolutely integral. And I gotta be real, like that's part of the reason, I mean, I'm sure you too, Tyson, like that we're out here, we're doing this. I mean, like, we are artists, we are music people, we are music folk, and we're out here doing music, you know? But like, people need community, and nothing really can champion on an artist as much as a fellow artist, I believe, because there's just such a common ground there. So, and obviously it can get toxic, and it can slide the other way, and you have people who get jealous because you do what, you know, like there's those people out there for sure, you know, like nobody's perfect. But I think at its best, if you're able to link arms, you have someone on your phone that you could reach out to who gets this music thing that you could talk about life with, talk about music with, like that's a deep level of support. And that deep level of support, then I think just like spurs you on even further, because you feel supported. And it's a lot easier to create feeling supported than I think to create not feeling supported. And I've felt both things in my life in different seasons, and I'd much rather take the support. You know, I mean, like a lot of artists, you know, can kind of like flex about the chip on their shoulder they have, and I want to have respect for, you know, the backgrounds that anybody and everybody comes from, and that shaping and making them who they are. That's totally cool. It's just when artists kind of lean on that a little too heavy, almost where it's like, no, I thrive when everyone's against me. I'm like, dude, that's not sustainable, man. Like, cool, that helped you make this album, and that's part of the story. I love that. I can get down with that. But just like a lifelong career, I'm like, dude, I'll take support every day of the week. You know what I mean? It's like so much more fulfilling, less stressful, and the less stressed you are, I feel like the more creative you can be. And so anyway, I'm sure that's a point where we all would like to get to. But to kind of bounce off of that, I think I do want to bring up maybe an elephant in the room for some people is like, okay, you've got close people to you, like someone like a family or like a spouse even, right? And your spouse loves you but doesn't get this music, or maybe they're just not supportive of the music. And I think Tyson and I both have a couple thoughts here that we can try to help you with, but I got to be up front. And I believe Tyson's the same. I don't want to speak for you, but I believe it's the same for you too. Of like, I have a spouse that has never been unsupportive. So yeah, so it's just a little different. Like I've never not felt support from my wife in music or doing this music thing. She's always had my back. She's always understood to the best of her ability this thing that I'm doing. Just to preface that, I still have some thoughts, and I think I could reverse engineer what's going well about that to help someone who doesn't have that. But Tyson, how do you in this category? I think it's the same for you, right? You have a similar kind of story there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just a quick background of like when I realized I had that support was a really pivotal moment in my own journey as well. So just a quick background. So I studied a lot of music production, not officially, but just, on my own, studied a lot of music production in college and kind of got to this baseline of like, oh, I can do this thing. And then when I finished college, I had a degree in accounting, and so then I went into corporate worlds. I started working at some analytic firms and some, accounting firms and whatever else, like boring stuff. I ended my career working in healthcare billing. So anyway,
let's go.
Talk about like the most boring thing. It's healthcare, and then it's also billing on top of healthcare.
Inside healthcare. Yeah, way to go, man.
It's bad. So with that, I finally made the decision to go into music, and I was like kind of like wrestling with this internally because up to that point, like my wife and I had been married. Like we got married when I first started my first corporate job. And so I felt like she expected me to always have a corporate job, like, safe and secure, 9 to 5 that would provide for her and our family. And I then wanted to go in this different direction. And I was terrified of telling her of like, I don't know if I want to stick this out.
Yeah.
And so I remember specifically we were at this restaurant in Boise, Idaho. It's called The Griddle. It was on the east end of the town. And we were sitting at the bar. So we were like, not facing each other. So it was kind of weird.
Side by side.
And, we were just like talking. And I was like, I've been listening to this, other podcast. And, I think I want to make a go at this like producer thing. Like I want to work in music. And I remember that like she turned over to me and she's like, I think you should do it. Like that was the moment. Like that was just like an innocent comment. Like, I think you should go for it. Like that was the pivotal moment of like, oh, like she's actually behind me in what I'm trying to do. It probably also helped that I was miserable in my corporate job. And so she wanted to see me happy. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But honestly, like we also have this fear sometimes, I think, especially with those people close to us, of like even letting them in on our dream because we're afraid, like, what if you're not supportive? And sometimes, again, like to find that deep level of support. And my wife has always been supportive of me in my music endeavors, but she also doesn't quite get it. So she's kind of like one of these like weird categories, like in between the surface and deep support, because like she sort of gets it, but she doesn't really get it either. Yeah. Just because she's just like not in music, right? And that's natural. Right. But like with somebody that's so close to you, if they're not supportive, it's incredibly difficult. And so I don't want to like say if you don't have a supportive partner, like that is probably the hardest thing to deal with in this whole conversation. But also make sure that your partner or spouse or whoever is close to you in your life knows what your actual goals are and what your actual dreams are. Because without that, like they have no frame of reference and you're not even giving them the opportunity to decide for themselves if they're going to support you in that or not. So the very first thing in this conversation is you need to be upfront and supportive and detailed in what you want to do. Because if I had said like, I just want to like do music, And it's like, that's not very specific. Like, even though I didn't know, like, ultimately long-term what I wanted to do, I at least, like, told him, like, I want to be a producer. Like, I want to produce other artists. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, that, and that was, like, enough, I think, detail and specificity that it helped her understand, like, okay, he's not just, like, thinking about this broadly of, like, I just want to quit my job and, like, you know, be a surf bum and write music or whatever. You know, like, I'm not, it's not like that kind of lifestyle. It's more of, like, okay, he has a specific direction, like he's actually working towards something. And so I think that's a lot of it, is understanding, like, what your actual goal is. And I guess part of that is you need to understand where you're headed as well. If you don't have a specific goal, a specific vision of where you're going to end, then it's harder for other people to get on board.
This is the Prolific Super Producer podcast, not a marital counseling podcast. But I do think that the word here is communication. 100%. I think the word is communication. And I think it's also, I'm going to kind of like shift it a little bit. And like, if this triggers some people, like, I don't really care because I think it's true. And maybe you need to hear it if it triggers you this bad. But I think that before talking to your spouse, to ask yourself this question of, what am I doing to earn the support of my spouse? What am I doing to earn the support of my parents, if that's what you care about? What am I doing to earn the support of fill in the blank? Because actions speak louder than words. And if you're someone who's just been talking a lot, I mean, just talking about what you're going to do, and it's maybe music is the next thing in a long list of things you've talked about doing with your life, and there hasn't been a lot of action to back that up, your behavior is constantly on display, especially to those who are closest to you. So if you are not behaving in a way and you're not taking action and you haven't been demonstrating how seriously this music stuff means to you, it's going to be a very difficult conversation if that's the case for you, because you're saying, all right, I want to do music. It's like cue the eye rolls potentially, right? Because you haven't done anything to earn the conversation. And so that's been the big important thing for me, is like, hey, if I'm going to talk to my wife about something that's important to me, I need to make sure I've done what I can do, because when you point a finger, there's three pointing back at you. So like, before you go talking about something to your spouse or like, support me, it's like, oh my, that's a demand. You know what I mean? How about you earn it? And it's so much easier. And I do want to have a category for people who you are out here, you are doing your very best. You are holding down a job, you are working for music, and your spouse still doesn't get it. I don't know that I can help you in that. I don't know that this podcast can help you with that. But like, I'm sure there are people out there who can help you in that situation. All I can say is communication is key. And all I can say is that you kind of got to point the fingers at yourself too, and be like, what are you doing to show that you're someone who works hard, to show that you're someone who follows through, to show that you're someone who cares about your family and will hold things down, and everyone will be taken care of. And asking your spouse, what do you care about? What's important to you? What's important to you while I'm trying to do this music thing? And just coming up with a plan. If you enter the conversation less hurried, right? Less demanding, more humble, open-handed, and you've earned the support, like you've got your character backing you up and your spouse knows your character, I just think you have the best chance of success, because you can talk about a plan. And here's the thing, if you don't want to spend a few years to transition to this music thing, you shouldn't do it. You're not cut out for it. Like, I'm sorry, maybe you're not cut out for it yet, but right now, if me saying, hey, here's what you got to do. You got to start like acting like a musician, even though you're not one right now, even though you're not a professional right now, you need to act like it. So you're going to go to work, you're going to do your job, you're going to hang with your family, you're going to honor your spouse, and then you're going to get after it early in the morning or late at night. And you're going to do that for a long period of time to warrant a conversation with your spouse or significant other. Hey, let's talk about how I could transition to this. I know that stability is important to you, so I want to keep the job. I just want to keep that. Like, none of that's going to change. I want to set aside some money so that we have some stuff in reserves to make you feel more secure, make you feel stable. But I really want to be working on this music thing. What do you think about committing to some sort of workflow and changing our schedule so that over a few years, I could transition into this slowly and in a way that's conducive to our family? I just don't think a lot of people out here talking like this. I don't think a lot of people are talking like this. You know what I mean? Like, and if that sounds like something you don't want to do, you don't really deserve to get after music. I'll just say it. I care about you. It's coming from love. I want you to win. That's how you need to approach this crap. not with your whole ego. There's no room for ego in any of this. Tyson, you need to take over. I'm going to start losing my mind.
Yeah. That's totally true. I want to add to the fact of like, what does this practically look like? Because I think that most people don't understand the amount of effort that you really need to put in to not only be successful in music, but secondly, also show to other people that you're successful in music, or that you deserve to be able to pursue to be successful in music, right? Like there's so many kind of steps here, but what does that actually look like? It's not just like, oh, I make some songs on the weekend.
Yes.
Like that's not what it looks like. So I heard on a podcast, and I can't remember his name. Andy J. Pizza. That's what he goes by. Andy J. Pizza. He talked about on his podcast, if I'm not willing to wake up at 5 a.m. to start a project, that project's not important to me. And so I'm not going to do it. So that's his level. And, he says sometimes I'm not willing to wake up 5 a.m. in the middle of the project, but that comes down to like character of like endurance, determination, and like just continuing, right? But if he's not at the beginning excited enough to wake up at 5 a.m. to start the project, he won't do it. So I would challenge you, if you are serious about pursuing music and you still have a day job and you decide, okay, like I want to pursue this. If you're not willing to wake up at 5 a.m. to put in a couple hours of worth of work on your music before you go to your day job, you don't care enough, and you won't make it in music. Because at the end of the day, the only people I know that have ever made it in music, which is quite a few at this point, I have networked with enough people, they felt like they had no other choice but to do music. There was no plan B, and ultimately they forced themselves to pursue this with everything that they had until they made it. And it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time, and you're going to be tired for years trying to pursue this thing. And the people who are going to be successful are those that do it for a long enough time and do it enough times to then basically rule out luck and are successful by default, because after a certain number of iterations of effort in whatever field you're trying to be successful at within music, it'll be unreasonable that you won't have achieved some level of success because you've done it enough times. So at the end of the day, just as a quick example, like, and not to like boast about like what I did or anything, but just to show you like what I did to be successful in music as an encouragement, is I woke up at 5 a.m. every single day before I went to my day job. I worked from 5 to 7 every single day, trying to get clients, working on mixes, working on my skills, doing production, all of this stuff before I then started my day job. And then I worked from 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. I would go have dinner, and then I would come back to the studio for another couple hours, work on music before I would then actually go to bed. That's what my weekly routine looked like. I had about an hour with my wife, and then I had like half a day on Sunday to spend with my wife. It was really hard, and it took a toll for a while, like on our relationship with my wife, but we both were committed to making this thing happen for me, and like that is what support looks like. And she was willing to sacrifice time with me to ensure that I would be able to be successful in this music endeavor. That's just an example of what it might look like for you to be successful in music. That sacrifice, though, will pay off in the long term when you reach that level of like, okay, I can finally quit my day job. Or your life circumstances change in a way that you can ultimately finally drop whatever other things you're doing and then be able to focus more full-time on music. So I want to set expectations, though, of this journey is not easy, but it is worth it.
Yeah.
But if you don't care enough to put forth that effort, then don't start. That's what I'm going to do. Or maybe you just need some character development to understand that before you start. And that's okay. Like not everybody is cut out to be in music. And but at the same time, like you could become that person who gets cut out to be in music.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
Yes.
So don't say that, just because it's not in this season, like I can never pursue music. That's not true. It's maybe just not yet. Maybe I need to do some development of myself and my character before I really pursue this thing. Anyway, I think I'm going to start repeating myself. So Nathan, do you want to add anything to that?
No, yeah, I just think this is and look, the way that we are talking, please hear us. Like, we're not acting like we have it all together. Like, we're talking so passionately because we've been the people that we're kind of calling out right now, if that makes sense. Like, I've been the person who didn't communicate well. I've been the person who, like, just was letting things slide and being sluggish in my behavior, not actually going after things and seeing the ripple effects that had on people close to me. Like, have been there, did there, like, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, did the whole thing, like, and that's the person who I want to speak to now. And that's why we're talking, because we're talking to people who actually want to take this seriously. And if you're realizing, hey, this is just a hobby, that's a fun thing, I love that. Like, I just love that. It's so good. It's just the second you start to talk like you want to do this thing for real, well, then I'm going to talk to you like an adult. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to talk to you like someone who's actually gone through this. Tyson's going to talk to you like someone who's actually gone through this, and we're going to pump you up all the way. Freaking go get them. Let's do this. You can absolutely do this. There's plenty of space for everybody. You can do it. The same time, that doesn't mean it's easy. The same time, you're probably going to have to sacrifice some things. The same time, you're going to have to be consistent. You're going to have to communicate with your family. Like, yeah, it all coexists. It's all together. So I hope you hear our heart is like, we're trying not to like wave the finger. It's like we're talking to all of us. Remember, we're all fellow musicians. We've all gone through this. Yep. None of us are perfect, and none of us will ever be perfect at handling all this stuff. But take heart, because there is a path forward. There is a way that you can do this, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. You just take it a day at a time. There's a way that you can get. There's a way that you can move towards to where you want to be. So, I guess any final thoughts here, Tyson, of this whole conversation as you're thinking about yourself, maybe thinking about yourself 10 years ago or something. I don't know, like what you'd love to hear.
I think there's a couple of things that I want to say. Is that, first of all, like, everything that I said just a couple minutes ago, that was to myself like 7 years before I committed to music. So at that point in time, like, I was in music and I thought I wanted to be in music, but I did not have the character or the development to truly pursue this thing. And I like thought I was pursuing it, but I really wasn't putting in the level of effort necessary to actually be successful. So again, this all kind of comes back to like setting expectations of it takes a ton of effort. And I'm harping on this because somebody needs to hear this. Maybe it's you, that you need to hear that this is going to be really hard. And if you're not prepared for that, then you should probably either delay or just not pursue this. Maybe it's just not for you. So with that said, though, at this point, if you are listening to this episode and you are just totally bought in, you're like, okay, I am ready to fully commit to this music thing, and I am ready to put in the effort to make this music thing happen for me, then I have an amazing resource for you. So as part of my music management agency that I am part owner in, we created this free guide that is going to help you get your first release out there and actually get traction with this release. And as advertised, it does take some effort, but you'll actually be dedicating your effort into something that you know is actually going to result in real results for you. So if you're ready to put in the effort, then go ahead and go to nightowlmusicgroup.com/guide. And I have a guide there that kind of gives away all of our secret sauce that we use with our clients to get 100,000 streams on their very first release. So it's teaching you how to write a song and how to produce a song in a way that actually gets a result that is capable of getting a significant amount of traction in the industry. Because ultimately, that's what holds us all back, is that sometimes we're just not that confident with our song. Like, maybe it's not actually good enough yet. And this guide will actually teach you how to be super confident and give you the confidence that you need to then actually promote it. So you won't be sitting back there like, I don't know if it's ready yet, and I'm going to put it out there. This is like a soft launch, It won't be that. It'll be, you're now a legitimate 900-pound gorilla in the music industry, right? That's what we're after. So that's what this guide will actually be able to bring you to produce a song that is at that caliber. And so that is nightowlmusicgroup.com/guide if you want to go get that. And with that, ultimately, we want to be supportive. I have a whole bunch of resources that I would love to send you also, along with that guide, to be able to encourage you in this music journey. And so there's a lot of, mindset shifts and just things that we've learned being in the music industry for so long, or thus far, I should say. And we would love to be able to share like our wins, what, those milestones that we've passed to be able to encourage you. So if you want to hear more about anything that we've talked about this episode, or anything that you are interested in the music industry that we might be able to help with, then go ahead and leave a review for us, and that we will prioritize that for a future episode so we can help you where you're at and move you closer to your goals within music. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we will see you in an episode here real soon.